Hey, welcome to the Cosmic Car Wash Podcast. I'm Paul Daly. This is my good friend Rick Kaiser.
Hello, everybody.
And 2 weeks in a row now. We're back from the holidays. We're getting back into our rhythm, feeling it. This feels good. Feels really good.
It does. It does. Looking forward to many, many, many more this year.
Yes.
Maybe we
this is actually, we started this in 22. So this is 22, 23, 24. This is our fourth year.
Wow.
In which we're doing podcasts. So,
gosh. Yeah, we're still not running out of things to say.
Nope. And I suspect until the day Jesus cracks the sky and reveals himself to the rest of the world, to the whole world, we'll have plenty to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's exciting. It's good news. And this is the thing, as I am at my desk during the week talking about how to manage product information for a Fortune 500 appliance manufacturer. This is the thing that I want to be talking about. This is the thing that I want to be doing because this is where it's at. I know there's value in the work that I do, and I'm thankful for it, and my job is a blessing, and I want to do the best that I can to honor God and honor my employer and take care of my wife and dog to the manner to which they become accustomed. But this is where my heart's at.
Yeah, mine too. I always feel so refreshed when we wrap this up.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So today we're talking about the posture of a servant. And I think this, for Rick, kind of sprung for you out of the current devotion that we're in through the YouVersion Bible app based on the writings and teachings of Craig Keener and his study of the Bible about just helping us understand the context of a lot of different things in Scripture. So, yeah, what was it about the posture of a servant that really stuck out to you and led you here?
Well, it was just the day before yesterday, I think, and the title of the devotion is Context, and we both are very familiar with Craig Keener, and I have both of his commentaries, New Testament and Old Testament, and I wore the New Testament commentary out. I think I ended up getting a new one, literally. But he approaches it from an historical and cultural perspective, not a denominational, coming through even Western slants or our culture and certain denominations. And there certainly are a lot of commentaries, from that perspective, whatever the denomination may be. There's a lot that, filter their comments and their commentaries through those and even through our culture. And I think a lot is missed. You and I have talked about this many times as we read, because I find that a lot of people they're casual Bible readers. They're just very topical.
Right.
And so it's just skim over the top. And so many people believe that it's written directly to them. So they take scriptures out of context and it becomes their favorite scripture. And if it helps them, that's great.
Yeah.
But sometimes many of them are taken out of context. And I truly believe and have experienced that when you get the actual context of a certain verse, what was written before, how it was set up, what was written after, and who it was written to, it actually has a much, much deeper meaning, and it hits deeper for me because I can understand. It's more relatable.
Yeah.
It's not just this random Christian Tourette's, that just Jesus loves you.
Right.
And to me, it's easier to apply. So it just rung a bell. I knew that we were, getting back on the podcast wagon. So, and it was late in the week. And I thought, what a great topic. So then when I started doing some research, I realized there are billions of examples in the Bible. And so I just started with just a brief, a short little definition, not a biblical definition, but what is posture? Your posture is the natural way you hold your body. It's the position your body's in while you're sitting still and moving. And, I can, I had friends and even my mom, stop slouching, and,
My dad's thing was, hold your gut in, keep your muscles tight. That was his big posture.
Hold your gut in. Sometimes that's difficult.
I know, the older I've gotten, right.
Hold your gut in. I am. So, yeah. And so there's two types. Dynamic posture is how you hold yourself when you are moving, like when you're walking, running, bending over to pick up something. And static posture is how you hold yourself when you're not moving, like when you're sitting, standing, sleeping, or laid back in the recliner with a remote in your hand, which is my favorite posture.
Preach.
Preach. Oh, that's funny. I just grabbed a couple examples and some from devotions that we've done in the past. How long have we been doing devotions together?
Consistently, like literally every day, it's been well over 5 years.
Yeah, I was just thinking 6 years.
Yeah.
Easy. 6 years easy. And still, yet I find myself, Paul, as I'm praying, that my concern is lip service. I talk to God about that. I talk about authenticity, that my words will confirm my actions.
Yes.
My actions will speak louder than my words.
Yeah.
So it's a great, great place to start, certainly. So I'm just going to start with, I just have a few examples, I guess, and then, I'll kick it over to you, and then we can maybe just kind of go off and see where it takes us. This is funny that before we started the podcast, you prayed, and we always pray before we start our podcast, but you prayed what I prayed this morning. But I invited, please join us.
Yes.
I do that now a lot.
Yeah.
For a lot of things. I mean, we're playing tomorrow night. We got a little gig. There's a lot of places to play around the lake.
Yeah.
And Janet and I, we throw that money in our little gig can, and we use it to go see the kids or take a long weekend, for anniversary. So I started inviting him. Hey, love for you to come.
Yeah.
And help us to be medicine. Help us to be the song of encouragement.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he does. Anyway,
I believe it.
Tangent, rabbit trail. So I thought of the 7, Act 6, when they chose 7 guys to wait tables. And I wrote this after a few things, is that humility is a core component on the path to promotion. It is teachable, it is reachable, and it follows instructions. It is driven by gratefulness, fueled by thankfulness, and determined by forgiveness. It waits patiently but works tirelessly. It applauds promotion even when it's not its own. It hears need through the blathering cacophony of ego, and it understands there are no volunteers in a kingdom, only servants. And Stephen, well, most people that have spent any amount of time in the Bible know who Stephen is. He was the first martyr after the resurrection and the ascension. And he waited tables, and they chose 7 guys. And those 7 guys had to be godly men.
Yeah, exemplary.
Yes, their requirements weren't, they didn't have to submit a resume of all of the Taco Bells and, Applebee's they worked at. It was, because I've met some of those guys. I was one of those guys, and I would not have been chosen.
Right. Same.
No. And they probably had, I would imagine more than 100 people to choose from, wouldn't you think?
I would think so. I mean, the church was already thousands by that point. So.
Yeah, you're right. So there was hundreds, maybe even thousands, out of all of those people, there could have been easily, a grand.
Yeah.
So they picked 7 guys. And I know you growing up in Smithton, you grew up in, Smithton Community Church, that's Steve Gray.
Yep.
Which, by the way, thanks for that message you sent me. I haven't listened all the way through yet. I'm working on it. Is it?
Yeah.
I love that guy. I do. He can preach. So you found yourself at church a lot, and I imagine you were working, doing something.
I did a lot.
Yeah. Me too. And even this week, I've been at the church all week. Today's the only day I wasn't there, scraping and painting walls. And then I'll be there tonight to practice for worship. And then I'll be there Sunday morning to lead worship. So it's not a bad gig.
No.
I find those eternal. So speaking of posture is, I think it's many things. When we kick it back at the end, I guess I'll talk about the ultimate posture of Jesus. And it is, I think the core of posture, especially in the biblical sense, is availability. And what's the word we're looking for is, they just slipped my mind. But it's being available anytime, no matter when nobody else will do it.
Right.
I mean, both of us, we've cleaned bathrooms, cut grass,
Yep.
painted, changed carpet.
I've
Yeah,
worked in the kids ministry. I worked the soundboard. I was on the
yeah,
worship team.
cooked
Put up
lunch.
drywall, cooked food.
Yeah, served food, washed dishes, drove vans full of stinky teenagers.
Did that. Yep.
So it starts there. So I'm going to kick it to you and just hear what you have to say about.
Yeah, so as I was thinking about this yesterday, what came to my mind was how I imagined some person that is not a regular Bible reader, maybe not a regular church attender, hearing us talk about the posture of a servant and maybe bristling at the idea of or linking it with being a slave. And there's a lot of talk in our culture about reparations for things that were done, to people that are no longer alive by people that weren't alive then, to repay them for the slavery that they had to endure. And what came to my mind, if I was going to talk to somebody about that, to say, well, being a servant or a slave is not a position, it's a condition of our hearts. And I think I wrote this in my devotional response this morning as I was still kind of meditating on that with, the things that we were reading through Exodus and then through the book of, I think, Luke this morning in Keener's. But you can be a person, you can be bound in some sense, in some kind of slavery and still be free based on, because the gospel of Jesus Christ sets us free. Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. That's not necessarily a guarantee that our outward circumstances will change, but we are free on the inside. And conversely, I think you can be the most free person in the world, living high on the hog, and enjoying all the creature comforts of life and be a slave to your own desires, to your own passions, to, your base needs and wants, and just live a miserable life. So yeah, that's what I would tell somebody that's, questioning, well, what do you mean about being a servant? It has nothing to do with my position or my station in life. It's the condition of my heart.
That's really good.
Do I approach life and do I approach others, even others that I might be tempted to think, well, I'm better than them or I'm above them for whatever reason. We all compare ourselves with others. I think it's unavoidable. It's just part of the human condition. And we're always ranking and measuring ourselves based on others. And we find ourselves either above or below when we respond to that based on the nuances of our character and all the things that we've experienced in our life. But I want to be a person who approaches every person with humility. And we see this. Jesus is absolutely the best example of this, that he was and is the self-existent, eternal God of all creation, who always was, is, and always will be. But he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but he took the form of a servant and humbled himself. And there's lots that has been said and will continue to be said about he gave up his life on the cross. And in the message that the recording, the YouTube link that I sent you of Pastor Steve Gray's message from Revive Church in KC, he was talking about one particular vision he had of Jesus. And the way he made it sound was, he was kind of on the platform there at the church and they were in worship and he saw Jesus. He said he was a very small statured man, shorter than he was. I think Steve Gray's probably 5'9", 5'10". He said Jesus was a small person, and he's like, he was just very humble and meek. And he's like, unless you're pure evil, how could you want to kill this man? Because he just looked so gentle and calm and yeah. And that really struck me, that Jesus, who is the God of all creation, had no problem coming and being completely disguised as a servant. And The message he went on to preach really was just really fantastic about the way of holiness is losing ourself in him so that we can't be found. Like we just completely dissolve into Jesus, and that it's in that dissolving. He used the references in scripture to the hills that melt like wax at the presence of the Lord. He said, I just want to melt in the presence of God and let him reform me into whatever he wants me to be. And yeah,
That's
just
good.
that condition, I think that's where my mind really went with this, is that condition of humility of I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And a dead person, a person that has been lost in Jesus doesn't have any opinions of their own anymore. Like, this isn't my life. This is Jesus living his life through me.
There you go. That's good.
So
That's good. You're right. Yeah, that's very profound. There is a vast difference between a server and a servant.
yes, I think that's a great way to characterize it. I like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of servers, people who serve, but how far, how close is that from being a servant? Because a servant is always a servant, whereas a server, you do your duty and clock out
Clock
and go
in,
home.
clock out. Yeah.
And it's not always going to look the same either. And a perfect example is Tychius. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. It's either Tychius or Tychius. In Colossians 4:7, his name means chance. But he was, Paul, in his letter to the church in Colossus, says, Tychius will tell you all the news about me. He is a dear brother, a faithful minister, and a fellow servant in the Lord. So he's the one that took the letter, him and Onesimus, and they traveled. I don't know how far they had to go, but I'm coming to find out that some of these walks weren't, across town or a couple blocks away. They were days away.
Yeah.
Days. When Joseph went to go check on his brothers, go check on your brothers. It was a 4-day walk. Then it took him another day to find them. 5 days wearing his coat, so he had to have provisions, a tent, sleeping bag, food, and then they threw him in a well and sold him. So, yeah, nice brothers. That's sibling rivalry at its finest. What a privilege. But I also have to believe that Tychius was a servant long before. He was probably very well trusted because this was one letter. It wasn't a Xerox photocopy, and we're running out 10,000 of these. We want you to put them in horse and buggies, and throw them through people's windows.
Right.
There was just one, and so that was the most important thing, was getting that letter, that word to the church in Colossus. So he picked those two guys, and there's a reason why he picked those two guys. And to the person, and this is, you're talking about the human condition, just kind of to veer a little bit off of this, is that and I've been guilty of this too, back in Illinois when I was, all in at a church in Northern Illinois in the suburbs of Chicago. I was there. I was an elder, and I was scrubbing toilets, cleaning urinal, changing urinal mints, and I was there. I was there when no one was there. I was constantly working and working.
Yep.
And when you're, and when you're cleaning in a bathroom on a Saturday night after prayer, and people come in to use it, and laugh at you and kind of mock, hey, you missed a spot over here, and when you're done here, come to my house, and that kind of stuff. It can be a little discouraging, if the condition of your heart is not right.
Right.
And that's kind of a tough place, and I've been there, because then you begin to, you think, what are you doing?
Right. You start to harbor resentments and.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you start to, so the first thing that pops in your mind is, well, what are you doing?
Right.
How come nobody's working as hard as me? And that is not a good place to be.
No.
And so it doesn't always look the same. And even though, just again, context that we're kind of on our devotion, is that we don't know what Tychius and Onesimus went through, or how hard they worked, or the sacrifices that they made, and the service that they provided, and the things that they gave up and overlooked, and even maybe the mocking and humiliation they endured, to be counted among Paul's most trusted servants.
Yeah.
So we don't see that. We just see this really cool thing they get to do. And really it was.
Yeah. I think, you're a musician, and the the analogy that comes to mind is, a lot of bands have their front man. You're a front man for your band, and then there's those guys that are in the back playing drums or guitar or on the keyboards that
Right.
a servant says, you know what, I'm okay being back here. I can be a backup dancer. I don't need to be the one in the spotlight. I don't need to be the one that, people scream my name and want my autograph. I'm okay doing my part and making this thing sound beautiful. And yeah, I don't know. I just, that analogy.
No, it's a very good analogy that you need those pieces. You have to have synergy because the sum of the parts is greater than the parts themselves.
Yeah.
That's the definition of synergy, because when you're all alone, then you're really exposed, either
Right.
how good you are or how much more practice you need. And I feel that many times, the better the musicians that you're with, it makes you put your nose to the grindstone. And, talk about condition of the heart. When you were talking about that, it reminded me, and I did prison ministry back in Illinois. I did it for about 5 years. And I always like to tell people, especially when I first meet them, that, I spent 5 years in prison. Dramatic pause, ministry. Because especially if you're having dinner at their house and they're church people and they got kids. They go, I spent 5 years in prison, ministry.
5 years in Joliet.
So actually I went there and just visiting. I got to leave. But I remember, I'll never forget this guy. Can't remember his name, but he was at Statesville in Joliet. And I don't know if Statesville, Joliet, anyway, Statesville. Most people from Illinois know where it is. And Paul, he lit the room up, because we would drive early, get checked in, and we'd have 2 services. We would have one in population, then we would have one in isolation. And then we would, in between, at a break, we'd go eat with the inmates, the convicts. And that's when I realized why they do riot. The food was horrendous. But, you're hungry. And people were whispering, don't drink the Kool-Aid, because I don't know if it's true, but the inmates would drink it because it said it had saltpeter in it. I still don't know what that is, but so I didn't drink it.
Nope, I don't want to ask.
Yeah. Anyway, he was such a beautiful guy. I mean, he lit the room up, because I can remember being up there, and I usually did the music, and sometimes there were just 2 of us. Sometimes there'd be like 4 or 5, half a dozen of us. And so we'd do music, a little testimony or whatever. And then we would have a sermon, and we had limited time. There were hard stops. And then we'd have save time for prayer. And you always pray for everybody,
Yeah.
But I'll never forget him, Paul. Talk about the condition. And he was just smiling, lit up, one of the most happiest people. He was happier than most of the people in my church. And I talked to him. I remember going up and shaking his hand and introducing myself. And I said, you're one of the happiest people I've ever met. And he goes, that's because if I had never come to prison, I would have never met Jesus.
Wow.
And he was so sincere, Paul, that I'll never forget him. He was as genuine and sincere, happy. And he met Jesus in prison. Mm. He said, if I had never come here, I'd probably be dead. But I met Jesus in prison. And that's all he did. As a matter of fact, he's the one that should have been preaching.
Right.
Not us.
Wow. Nice.
But yeah, that is a condition. That is a posture of a servant.
Yes.
And I'll kick it back to you.
I have a similar story. I got to travel to India in 2002 with the pastor of the church I was going to at the time and his mother. And we went to give money to this ministry that our church supported over there. And it was used to buy bicycles. And this ministry had a Bible school. So a lot of the students at this Bible school were, they had come out of their families who were Hindu, and they had accepted Christ and got excommunicated from their family. So this Bible school and this ministry was their home, and this was their new family. and we traveled around we were there for about 9 days, I think, traveling around to different churches. We actually got to teach at the Bible school, which is a really cool experience. I remember that I taught on worship as warfare.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. But my point in saying all that was we met a local pastor there. He was newly married. He and his wife had an infant son. He made $30 a month. The rent for his house was $10 a month. It was a concrete slab, maybe 15 by 20, 15 by 30, with 4 walls and a thatch roof. That's where they lived. That's where they slept. They ate, the whole thing. And he pastored a small congregation in this tiny little village. And same thing, he glowed. You would have thought this guy was, living on Fifth Avenue in a penthouse suite. Just, that's how happy he glowed with. You could tell the guy just loved to serve God. And there was a language barrier, and so it was difficult to kind of communicate. But I just remember the look on his face, man. Like this, he was living the dream.
Gosh, I love that.
And I thought, yeah, that's the same thing. Is by worldly standards, this guy doesn't have much at all. But he had a wife and a son that were both healthy, and he got to preach the gospel, and probably under some very harsh conditions, surrounded by a culture that was very not Christian. And he was
Tychius.
Yeah,
carrying the letter, carrying the gospel.
Yeah,
I love it. That is just an absolutely beautiful story. We just finished talking about on our devotion the prodigal son.
Yep.
And the context behind that story. And you and I we've gone back and forth many, many times talking about the prodigal.
Yeah.
And the story is probably preached, I would imagine, almost as much, if not more, than the birth of Christ.
Yeah, it's right up there, like the most popular.
Top 5 most preached sermons, the prodigal. And we've made it all about the prodigal, and I don't have a problem with that, but it's used as a huge evangelical tool and to get people to come to the altar. And we've really focused a lot of, not, but a lot of churches and evangelists have focused on that as a tool to get people to say a prayer. And again, you and I have discovered, or however you want to say it, that story has always been about the father, not about the son, because there were 2 brothers. The thing that's, the posture of a servant is that the son, even on his way home, he's concocting a story.
Right.
So I've always wondered, how really repentant was he? And I think once his father engaged him, that probably broke his heart and melted him. But on the way, he had worked up his little speech.
Yeah, he still got a scheme at that point.
Yeah, you're right. That's what I was looking for. He was scheming, Yeah, he was, Potsy and Richie scheming before they got home. Archie and Jughead.
Yeah.
And he was content to be a servant. Yeah, a slave, really, instead of a son. Anyway, in as many Passovers as they attended, I mean, Jesus' ministry, they estimate between 3 and 3.5 years. So they literally a lot of them could have had Passover, the Seder, with Jesus possibly 4 times. This could have possibly been their 4th time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're pretty sure it was the 3rd time. So this was not unusual. This was not their first Passover together. And a side note, when he said, "This is my body broken for you," that was not standard language at a Seder dinner. So that had to be shocking. What is he talking about? And "This is my blood poured out for you." No, it's not. That's wine. That kind of language. But anyway, before that ever happened, it was very common for when you went somewhere, especially if you were, a rabbi, a priest, or someone important. It was very important. It was traditional and hospitality, and that was, without it, it was considered absolutely rude and disrespectful. But it was to wash feet, because nobody wore socks, nobody wore it was open-toed shoes. There were sandals, and if you didn't have sandals, you were considered slaves. Didn't wear shoes, and so for all of those times together, there isn't one mention of his his apostles, his disciples, I guess, his students ever washing his feet.
Right.
And I thought
Okay.
about that. So he washes theirs because out on the roads, walking along, there was mules and donkeys and camels and cattle. So there was probably a lot of interesting things to step in,
Things
if you
to
were.
try to avoid on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, a little donkey do with all the dust and the mud. So, that's why they would wash their feet before they walked into somebody's house, so they weren't
Yeah.
carrying all that stuff with them. And here, Jesus washes their feet. And I did write in the devotion that I've been in a couple. I'm sure you have been some foot washing ceremonies.
Yeah. One or two.
Yeah, back when as a new Christian in the bowling alley church back in Rantoul, we had several, and it was an event. They would actually have, and you'd go, and there'd be music playing, and the lights were a little bit dimmed, and
Yeah.
people were praying, and you could be working at the car wash, and you could also be on the receiving end. Well, for me, it was very easy to wash people's feet, and pray, and just really, really get into the presence of the Lord and praying for them. And that was easy for me. What I struggled with, Paul, was having mine done.
Mm.
It was so humbling. And I did. It was I just almost, no, I can't. But I knew that I had to. And it was very humbling. It broke me. And these people are on their knees and my feet. I mean, it just brings tears to my eyes even thinking about it, as they're washing my feet and they're crying and praying. And it just wrecked me. It absolutely wrecked me. So I can understand a little bit of Peter's, apprehension about, no, you'll never wash my feet. And it says, if you don't let me, you have no part in me.
Yeah.
And so, and even washed Judas's feet, knowing that he was going to betray him. But
Yep.
God never gives up. He never gives up. And the more I thought about this and the posture of a servant, we have the best example is that the posture of a servant is the posture of our Father. He never gives up. And he'll take off his outer garment, throw on a belt, and kneel down. Think about this, Paul. The God of the universe, the Lord of the nations, and the God of all creation, the captain of a host, Adonai, Yahweh, is washing our feet. God, that just wrecks me. And that is the posture. The posture of a servant is one who will wash feet, but more than that, servants never give up.
Yeah.
They never give up.
That's just a place of being so secure and so grounded and so just settled that there's nothing that's beneath you because
yeah,
you're not worried about losing anything.
Because you don't have anything to lose.
Nothing to lose. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. That's when all of my details become his details, and all of the details his life become more important than my own. And that is the posture of a servant. And the more we talk about it, the more I realize I feel like I have a long way to go.
I'm telling you, that'll change. I'm just thinking about my own life. That will change the way I relate to my wife, the way I relate to my puppy, the way I relate to my employers, to my friends, to my ex-wife.
Yes.
It changes that because there's nothing left of, if I really embrace that, there's nothing left in me to get offended or to try to protect.
Nope. And yeah, that got me. And it's the thought of Jesus. He rose from the dead. He was, and remains the Son of God. He is God.
Yeah.
And he washed feet and said, if you don't let me wash your feet, you don't have a part in me. And he wasn't, being demanding or argumentative or bratty. He was pleading with Peter from great depths of mercy and kindness, saying, please let me do this.
Yeah.
I want you with me. It wrecks me, dude.
That reminds me of a meme that I saw. Not a funny meme, a stop you in your tracks meme. It says, what would I do if I knew I only had one day to live? Jesus knew, and he washed feet.
Oh my God.
He washed feet.
Dude, My goodness. Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Right? I need to go ball.
I think we've got the title for this podcast.
Yeah.
You washed feet.
One day to live. You wash feet. Yeah. That's a T-shirt. That's a poster. That's a mandate. That's a mission. That is the ultimate definition of the posture of a servant.
Yes.
Wow. All right.
I know you got to go, my friend. Thank you for this. Like you said, this was exactly what I needed to talk on and meditate on before I head into my weekend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
Okay.
I'm just long.
Yeah.
What do we always say?
God is not mad at you.
Right.
He's not.
God's not mad at you.
If you want to find out more about that, please, we would love it if, people would reach out to us at, the best way to do it is to leave comments here. I get email notifications with the comments. I will happily respond to every single one if I got to take a week off work to do it.
Awesome.
People can find us in the YouVersion Bible app.
Yes.
Our names are here. Our pictures are on our profiles. We'll invite you into our little online church of sorts that we've got there. And
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we would love for you to join us on our YouVersion church. That's what we've been calling it, because we have a lot of people. There's people we have never met.
Yeah.
And you may not be in a church right now and don't know where to go. Well, this is a good place to start with us. And it's not live. It's not a Zoom. It's just a devotion. And you can do it at your convenience and your comfort. We do ours first thing in the morning, but there's people that don't get to it till later in the evening. So it's just joining us in reading some scripture. If you have prayer needs, there are people that as soon as you announce that you need prayer, there's people that pray, boom, right then and there, and post their prayers for you. It's just it's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Yeah. It's kind of digital feet washing.
Yes.
So we would love for you to join us, and good place to get grounded and get into the scriptures and start your journey.
Yeah. So. Yeah. All right. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, dude.
I appreciate
it. Good to see you. Always good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well.
Stay warm up in Michigan.
Well, I'm trying. It's one day at a time. All right. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Love you, man.
Love you.